Ezra's Embarrassment, the Hidden Hand, and the Work of the Spirit. Hello, everyone. My name is Persohn. You can contact me at pastor@mascot.church, which is my email address, or in the comments below if you like. If you interact with this video in any way, like, share, subscribe, send it on. YouTube may recommend it on to somebody else. So we have been looking at the post-exilic writers. We've been looking at Ezra, who is very important in this. Who are the post-exilic writers? What's the post-exilic work? This is the work that occurs, the things that happen after the people come back into the land. The temple needs to be rebuilt. The city needs to be rebuilt. A lot has to be done. The people are in captivity. And God raises up some very, very critical people. God raises up the prophets, of course, Zechariah, Haggai, Malachi. He raises up Zerubbabel, Joshua, Ezra and Nehemiah. A bunch of very critical people are raised up to prepare for this task. Some of the elements that are here are then reversed with the fall of the temple at a later time. The two witnesses and so on and so forth who are raised up at the beginning, they go away at the end. Wonderful stuff. Nevertheless, we've got Ezra, and Ezra is returning to the land from Persia. In Ezra, we see some other things happening, some really wonderful things. We see Ezra talking about God stirring up the hearts of people. In Ezra 1 opens with the statement that God stirred up the heart of Cyrus the king, prepared him. This is how you see God dealing with people. They don't know. Cyrus did not know that he was serving God by sending the people back to their various lands. It didn't faze him according to the reading anyways, and I agree with that. I understand. But God stirs him up and he does it. You see, this is how God guides the hand of rulers and history and so on. One of the most difficult topics to preach and I find I'm actually a little bit scared to do it, is this whole idea of the hiddenness of God, that God's choice is, his modus operandi, if you will, is to remain hidden, is to reveal himself as he chooses, but operate in the hidden hand. It's a wonderful thing, the Spirit of God operating behind the scenes. So Ezra has a substantial amount of treasure, about 1,500 people. He's moving into the land. Now there's something that you see here. There's a motif, a pattern. Ezra has to cross a river, which we're going to look at in just a moment, the river Ahava. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. We don't actually know where this river is, but it's changed over time. But it'll be interesting when we look at this passage. The motif of the crossing of rivers is very common in Scripture, or crossing bodies of water. We have the Red Sea in Joshua's day. We have the Jordan. We got several other rivers. Of course, the Lord himself enters into the Jordan, and as a type and a picture of baptism. And that there's many. Just do a study on the rivers in the Bible, and it's really quite fascinating. It's a couple of days of great reading. Ezra has all of these things in hand. Now, I've used the word Ezra's embarrassment here because it works better than the word that's actually used in the Bible, where it says that he was ashamed, because I couldn't quite say Ezra. The title doesn't work as well, but there we go. Now we're going to look at this passage from the book of Ezra. So Ezra is a very, very important man. God has raised him up along with Nehemiah and others, as I mentioned, and he's written a large amount of the scriptures. But here he's in this job. He is charged by God to rebuild the temple and get the operation of the temple working again. He uses very influential people, Zerubbabel. You can read it, Zechariah 4:6, and so on. Marvelous stuff. We're not touching on that a lot today. We're going to go and have a look at this. So let me pop this up on the screen here and flick back to the PowerPoint slide. Here we go. This is from Ezra chapter 8, 21. Just listen to, it's just very, very interesting. Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river Ahava, that we might humble ourselves before our God to seek from him a safe journey for ourselves, our children, and all our goods. For I was ashamed to ask the king for a band of soldiers and horsemen to protect us against the enemy on our way, since we had told the king, the hand of our God is for good on all who seek him, and the power of his wrath is against all who forsake him. So we fasted and implored our God for this, and he listened to our entreaty. So just look at this here. It says, I was ashamed to ask the king for a band of soldiers and horsemen because I'd said God was going to look after us. Isn't that wonderful? So you really get a look at some of these Bible characters in just such a special way. You just stand here with this man who has written so much. And he said, I'm going to proclaim a fast. That was not uncommon for a leader a civil or religious leader, to proclaim a special fast. And he said, we're going to fast. We're going to cross the river Ahava. I'm not asking the king for protection soldiers. Well, why would he need to? Well, first of all, he is bringing back a very substantial amount of gold and silver. You know, the book of Haggai talks about the gold is mine and the silver is mine. What was that for? For the rebuilding of the temple. And Haggai was also a post-exilic prophet in this same sort of time period. And Ezra is bringing this into the land. So he's got problems because people will find out that this ragtag group of 1,500 people carrying these burdens are probably carrying a lot of wealth with them. Don't worry, this is the answer. They knew what was going on. They're going back to rebuild. So they would have been prime targets for the marauders and for the enemies and so on of Ezra. And he's praying. And he could have asked the king. He could have said, get me horses, get me chariots, get me armed guards. I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I would do. That's what I would do. If you watch the news, the most famous museum in the world was broken into in broad daylight the other day, and valuable, priceless jewels were taken. You know, this was broad daylight. It's a funny story and all of that. But here we're talking about people crossing the desert and moving into an already hostile land and needing protection. And so here's Ezra saying, we fasted and we prayed. Should we ask the king for protection? No, I'd be embarrassed, ashamed to do it, because I said our God would look after us. There comes a time in our lives where we have to live according to our standards, and we've got to say, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not backing down here. This is what's required of me. I'm going to do this job. And you can just hear this in Ezra. Now, what I want to do is flick back to the screen for a moment and look at Ezra's commentary as he's brought this in. So, folks, Book of Ezra. Fascinating stuff. So if nothing else, read chapter 8 at the end of this conversation. Let's just flick back here and continue. Now, I'm using the English Standard Version, which puts some headings here, which aren't in the Bible, but they are helpful in some respects. And so this was the fasting and prayer we just read about. So now let's come down here and priests to guard offerings. Then I set apart 12 of the leading priests, and he names them Sherebiah, Hashabiah, and 10 of their kinsmen with them. And I weighed out to them the silver and gold and the vessels. So it's not only silver and gold, but it's these treasured vessels. And the offering for the house of our God that the king and his counselors and his lords and all Israel there present had offered. I weighed out into their hand 650 talents of silver, and silver vessels worth 200 talents, and 100 talents of gold. You're talking about millions and millions of dollars. 20 bowls of gold worth 100 derricks, and 2 vessels of fine bright bronze as precious as gold. And I said to them, you're holy to the Lord, and the vessels are holy, and the silver and the gold are a freewill offering to the Lord, the God of your fathers. Guard them and keep them until you weigh them before the chief priests and the Levites and the heads of the father's house in Israel at Jerusalem, within the chambers of the house of the Lord. So the priests and the Levites took over the weight of the silver and the gold and the vessels to bring them to Jerusalem, to the house of God. Read on. Then we departed from the river Ahava on the 12th day of the first month. Again, that's a significant day because the 15th day of the first month is Passover. So look at this. To go to Jerusalem. The hand of our God was on us, and he delivered us from the hand of the enemy, from ambushes. Wait, no, I've got that Passover date wrong. Ignore that throwaway comment. Then we departed from the river Ahava on the 12th day of the first month to go to Jerusalem. The hand of our God was on us, and he delivered us from the hand of the enemy, from ambushes by the way. We came to Jerusalem, and there remained 3 days. We remained 3 days. And so okay. On the 4th day, within the house of our God, the silver and the gold and the vessels were weighed in the hands of Meremoth the priest, the sons of Uriah. With him was Eleazar the son of Phinehas, and with them were the Levites, Jozabad the son of Yeshua, and Nodiah the son of Benui. The total was counted and weighed, and the weight of everything was recorded. So look at this verse here. The hand of our God was upon us. He delivered us from the hand of the enemy and from ambushes by the way. This is a popular culture, or it's a medieval art picture of kind of Ezra reading, the law from the temple. That's my backdrop here. But it's just so fascinating to listen to Ezra's story now and to see the hand of God, the hidden hand, how he protected them. Imagine this: the weight of the gold and the silver, billions Yeah, I should get this, I should calculate this up, what the value is worth. Millions and millions of dollars of gold and silver. Possibly the greatest amount of treasure that's ever crossed over land by an unprotected group of people. Who knows? Ezra calls out to God and said, I would be ashamed to ask the king for protection because I said God would look after us. And he does, and he brings them back into the land. You can really see, you can sometimes see a miracle, but you don't even know the miracle. Not only does God stir the hearts of Cyrus in the beginning of the book of Ezra, but he also stirs the hearts of the thieves and the vagabonds and the raiders to look the other way or to ignore what's going on. And you see this great thing. You see how God is doing this, how he accomplishes it. So, ladies and gentlemen, just a little picture here from this wonderful book of Ezra about staying true. If there's any personal application here, it's staying true to your standards. Sometimes there's a challenge. Sometimes it's very, very hard to do. But God blessed him in the end with that. So there you go. My name is Al Persohn. This has been a look at Ezra's embarrassment, the hidden hand, and the work of the Spirit.